Hello, welcome to one of my videos. It's been a while since I've made one. We are now June 2024 and this is for a local charity, Beanies for Babies. It's in South Africa and I am knitting the booties. They also call them the socks booties. They want them to fit the newborns, so whether they're used for the preemies or for the newborns, this specific pattern is called for. So that if it's a preemie, even though they're very tiny, they'll actually be able to still fit their little legs inside here. And then the baby will literally grow into the booties. So she's looking for something that is 8 centimeters across. So this is 8 centimeters across. And for 10 centimeters up. So that's 10 centimeters up. It works with this particular yarn, that size comes up. It's quite a thick DK. So the pattern does call for a DK, but sometimes the DKs are very thin. And this yarn is called Utopia Degrade. It's here in South Africa. It's a Turkish brand, but I buy it here. It's 80% acrylic and 20% polyamide. So it gives it a bounce, which I really like. Comes in different colors. So we're going to start by casting on. So the pattern is, if you want to take a screenshot of that, as you can see, I've changed one or two things. Like I've made it 16 rows so that I can get to my 10 centimeters. And the cast off, instead of a 30 centimeter tail, I made it a 45 to 50 centimeter tail. And for casting on, because I cast on a two needle style, I use a 60 centimeter tail. But these are actually, I use my arm, so I pretty much know where to pull the yarn to get to my arm. So we're going to cast on 31 stitches and we're going to do 6 rows of garter stitch. This is not a how to knit video, and also I have a very strange way of knitting. So I'm just going to pinch it there, pull it to my armpit, and that gives me my 60 centimeters. Then I go a little bit further down, I make a loop, so it's not a how to knit video. So it's not for beginners, it's for people who are intermediate or advanced knitting. I'm going to cast on my 31 stitches. That one counts as 1. I don't count as I cast on, I just cast on until I run out of tail, and then I count my stitches. As I usually knit doing something else, listening to podcasts, visiting my mother, sitting in the car. I don't always have the possibility of counting for as long as it would. To make the whole row, I'd have to count carefully, but this way I just cast on, run out of tail. So now I pull out the top needle, and then I'll count my stitches, groups of 10. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8. Some short 3, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8. Just put my needles back in. Sometimes I have more, sometimes I have less. 1, 2, 3. Count again. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 1. 31 stitches. Now I'm going to do 6 rows of garter, which is basically knit. So the way that I knit is called mixed continental. The continental style holds the yarn in the left hand or on the left hand, the way one would if one was crocheting. But because I twist my purl stitch, it's not a pure continental. There are videos on how to knit continental if you are interested in learning, if you do not knit this way. So I use my tail as a guide because I cast on with two needle cast on. My tail is at the beginning of my work. So when I've done row 2, I'll be back there. So that way I know when I've done an even number of rows, I return to where my tail is. I'm using pony aluminium children's needles. They come in plastic, but I don't like the plastic ones. So these are 4 millimeter. Let me just move some of these things out of the line of sight, because it can be quite distracting. Okay. What is... I still see things, sorry, but it just bothers me. That's my little teddy. Okay. That's the second row is completed. It takes about 25 minutes to knit a bootie. Of course, it depends if I'm in a setting where I have to put my work down. But if I'm just sitting and there are no other distractions, or I'm not called to do anything else, then yeah, without distractions, about 25 minutes. Depends on how rusty my hands are. If it's early in the morning, if it's the first pair, or if it's not. It can also affect how long it takes. I've completed 4 rows. The yarn's caught in my nail. Those of you who are South African will probably be having a good chuckle, because that's not a bruise on my nail. That is the ink from the voting. It's stained into my nail. It's growing out. So this local charity started in 2016 in Bloemfontein. Bloemfontein is a city here in South Africa. And a young group of medical students were doing part of their student residency in a hospital, and they realized the babies. Hang on, I'll tell you the story afterwards. Let me first tell you what's going on here. So I have come back to where my tail is. So it's an even number of rows, and I have 3 bumps on this side, and I have 3 bumps on that side, 6 rows, and now I'm going to decrease. So the decrease, let me get the pattern back. Here we are at the decrease. The decrease is over the next 5 rows. Knit 12, knit 2 together, knit 3, knit 2 together, knit 12. Continue decrease. The center panel remains same until last row is completed. Last row, knit 8, knit 2 together, knit 3, knit 2 together, knit 8. It'll equal 21 stitches. So off we go. I do count for the first row because I do not want it to be skew. I have to undo my work. So I knit 12, knit 2 together, knit 3, knit 2 together, knit 12. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Knit 2 together, but because my stitches are twisted, I have to do this. Knit 2 together, knit 3, knit 2 together, and knit 12. I always count the last ones as well because you never know, sometimes errors happen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Get the yarn. This row I'm going to be knitting 11, knit 2 together, knit 3, knit 2 together, knit 11. I don't count. It's an option, but I don't. As I said, I'm usually listening to a podcast or at my mum's, chatting to her. So coming up to my previous row knitted together, you can see it. It's nice and fat because it has these 2 stitches. So I go and fetch the other one and knit 2 together. Knit 3, knit 2 together. Once again, it's fat. It's got 2 stitches from the previous row. I'm going to do a little twist. Sorry about the way that I'm decreasing. And then knit to the end. So I will continue with that until I've done 5 rows of decrease, and I'll end up with 21 stitches. So as I was saying, here in South Africa, the students realized that the babies in the hospital, after they were born, they didn't have beanies, they didn't have booties, and they were suffering from hypothermia. And so, I don't know the exact details, but they found some knitters. Maybe they were knitting themselves. But they started to produce beanies and booties. And slowly over time, the pattern developed. They do require us to use the specific pattern, because this is the one that stays on the feet of the preemies, and it can stay with the baby right up until it's newborn, but it also fits a preemie. I knit the booties or the socks. They have two words, booties or socks. And other knitters knit the beanies. And then at a central gathering point, there are different drop-off points in South Africa. Some of the drop-off points are also where they collate the beanies and the hats together. I still have one more row. They collate the beanies and the hats together in a little bag. And then there's another distributor. She collects all the beanies and the hats. And then she takes them to the hospitals once they've been put into little bags. She takes them to the local hospitals and to the clinics. And I'm not in Bloemfontein, I'm in Gauteng. It's a province that's called Gauteng near Johannesburg. Between Johannesburg and Pretoria, that's where I stay. And there are drop-off points in Pretoria where I drop off my booties. So I know that I've come to the end of my 5 rows because I'm on the opposite side of my cast on. If I was on this side, I would know that I'd have an even number, but I'm on the opposite side. You can just double check. I count my stitches: 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 1. I like to count them because you'll be amazed at how often I end up with 19 stitches because I'm chatting or not concentrating. Now we are going to do the rib. The rib is knit 1, purl 1. I do that 10 times, and for the last stitch is a knit 1. Then on the next row it's purl 1, knit 1. I do that 10 times, and the last stitch is purl 1. I repeat this for 16 rows because I want to have the 10 centimeters that's called for. Even though the pattern says 14, I've written underneath here 16. So I'm going to start with a knit, and then I'm going to purl, and then I'm going to knit. Knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. I do that all the way to the end of the row. So yes, there's quite a few people now involved in bringing the beanies and the booties to the different hospitals and clinics. And the more people who produce beanies and booties, the more hospitals and clinics they can supply. To fight hypothermia in newborns here in South Africa. So those 2 rows make up the pattern. So now I'm back to the beginning. So that is my knit. And of course my tail is a guide. But now that I'm actually got the rib pattern established, the rib pattern is the guide. So as you can see, the first pattern is a purl, the bumps to the front, this bump here. So I automatically know it's a purl. But this is not a beginner's knitters. This is definitely for intermediate knitting. Oop, it happens sometimes. I have a second video for how to sew up the booties. Which I made a little bit earlier. So I generally knit up a ball at a time and then I sew them up all at once. It makes 12 balls. One ball makes 12 booties of this particular yarn. And then once I have the pile of booties, then I will tie them together in groups of 2. And then I pack them into a bag. Move a little bit. Sometimes happens we fall off the camera, don't we? I like my short needles. I used to use cable needles, circular needles, a lot because they were short. And then I found these Pony's Children needles and I absolutely love them. I also sometimes I use sock needles because they're also short. So much more practical for baby wear. So yes, as I was saying, because my tension may vary, depending on the time of day it is, I like to make up all the booties from a ball, because also the ball, even though it's the same yarn, I've noticed that the thickness of the yarn varies from ball to ball. And of course also the dye lots. So I made that mistake in the beginning. I was just knitting and then I'd put them in a big pile and then I would sew up later, and then I realized that they were not matching up. So I'm much more careful now. I have a chart on the wall where I write down the booties that I deliver. I pack them into a cooler bag. As I knit them, once they paired up into little groups of, well, pairs of 2, once they're paired up into 2, I pack them into the cooler bag and I write down on a little card. I think I'll make a little video of that just to show, and then I know that they're nice and dry in there because it's an insulated cooler bag from the supermarket. I buy them from Checkers, the cooler bag. Checkers here in South Africa, it's just over 20 rand, which is about £1 sterling for a lovely cooler bag with a zipper. And then I know the booties are in there, they are clean and they are dry. And that's how I deliver them to the drop-off points. The drop-off point I use, there are 2 here in Pretoria. I quite like the one, it's called Charming Wool, it's in Garsfontein. It's a wool shop, and they're also, the lady there, she is the one who collates the booties with the beanies. So all the different knitters drop off, also the crochet, you can also crochet, they drop off their finished product there, and then the lady, she collates them together and puts them into a little bag with a little note from Beanies for Babies. And then when the distributor picks them up, they're all ready to go. So I'm also happy to leave the cooler bag obviously with them because my booties are in there, and then they can use the cooler bag later on for other parts of the journey. So I'm just going to count because it goes quite quickly. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6. So that's perfect because sometimes before I realize it, I've knitted 18 rows. So now we come to the last cast off. Last rows cast off. I use a 6mm needle and I cast off a knit, and then I cut a 45 to 50 centimeter tail. I basically use it, I pull it to my armpit and then I cut it, and that's for sewing up. It said 30 centimeters, but I make it longer. Now the original pattern called for casting off loosely. I prefer to use a larger needle so that my cast-offs are all the same. I just bought an inexpensive pair of circular needles and I just cut the tail off here. You can also buy yourself, if you want to, you can buy yourself some sock needles, or just if you have a needle lying around, cast off a knit. Knit 2, pull over, knit 2, pull over the first one, knit another one, pull over the first one. Well, yeah, you don't knit 2 and pull over, you knit 1 and you pull over. Start off by knitting 2. There are different ways of casting off. This is just the way that I'm doing it. And I find it works just fine for this pattern. Yeah, I really did bungle up the beginning, didn't I? So you knit 2, and you pull the yarn over, then you knit 1, pull the yarn over, knit 1, pull the yarn over, knit 1, pull the yarn over. Come to the end, I pull the loop out. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pinch it here, and I'm pulling this all the way to my armpit, and then I'm cutting it. Here are my little scissors, which I tossed aside earlier. I come back to this loop, and I'm pulling it out. So now that one is done. And I will put it into its appropriate container. This one's called my working desk basket. I put it into there. It's almost finished. There's about another bootie in here. And there we go. So you will find my other videos in the series, how to sew up the booties. And then I'm going to make a little video to show them how I collate them together and how I pack them into the cooler bag. Thank you very much for watching. Bye then.